freedom fighters, freedom lovers, and those who just want stuff for free. Greetings and hello. It is I, your favorite undocumented social studies teacher who's just libertarian enough to make everyone uncomfortable, Mr. Palumbo, and this is the Professor Liberty Podcast. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone had a good Easter weekend last weekend. Spring is in the air. Baseball season has started. It's getting warmer. Good things, all good things to look forward to as the summer rolls around. If you'd like to email the show, the email is professorliberty1776@gmail.com. That's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. One more time for those students with IEPs, that's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Send me your questions, your comments, your concerns, whatever. Just send it to professorliberty1776@gmail.com. If you like what we're doing here, also don't forget to go to Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star rating. And it even would help more if you gave a written review. So on today's show, it might be brief again. Sorry for those of you who might be upset by that. Today we're going to start a new series called Important Battles. So in this series, I'm going to go all around the world, different wars, and we're going to look at specific important battles. And I thought the first one that we should do, not that it's in any particular order as far as greatness or significance, but surely this was a significant battle in the American Civil War, and that is the battle at Shiloh. Shiloh, located in Hardin County, Tennessee, wasn't supposed to be a major battle. Grant had used it as a staging ground for a bigger push into the Western theater. Grant's ultimate objective was to capture Corinth, Mississippi, which was a vital railroad junction, and it had a major Confederate supply depot. Controlling Corinth would cripple Confederate logistics in the entire Mississippi Valley and Western Tennessee. Shiloh, situated on the Tennessee River, was envisioned as a temporary staging area before the final push onto Corinth. But that is not what happened, as so many times in war, things go not as planned. Grant planned to link up with forces under General Don Carlos Buell and then launch a coordinated attack. Well, here is where things get dicey in the story, as the Union troops come across some Confederate troops that weren't supposed to be there. And subsequently, as we're going to talk about in a minute, these Confederate troops, led by General Johnston, is going to have a surprise attack. In the early dawn of April 6, a Union patrol stumbles upon a large Confederate force positioned close by. Despite this warning, most Union soldiers were caught completely by surprise, and Confederate Generals Albert Sidney Johnston and Beauregard are going to launch a pre-dawn attack, aiming to overwhelm the Union Army before it could react. And this surprise attack was a complete success. The Union lines were in complete disarray as soldiers were still sleeping or preparing breakfast. The Confederate strike was swift with its brutality, and Union forces were quickly overrun. This surprise attack was the brainchild of General Sidney Johnston, a graduate of West Point in 1829, ranking 13th in his class. This obviously placed him among the more successful candidates of that year. Despite his service in the U.S. Army, Johnson resigned his commission at the outbreak of the Civil War to side with his home state of Virginia, much in the same way of Robert E. Lee. He quickly rose through the ranks of the Confederate Army, becoming one of its most senior generals. Some laud Johnson's surprise attack as something sensible to attempt given the known circumstances. The Union Army was caught off guard, as we've said, and suffered heavy losses on that first day. However, critics counter that Johnston's plan relied too heavily on a flawless execution, which proved to be unrealistic. They also point out that the frontal assaults Johnston ordered on the first day resulted in massive casualties for the Confederacy, a burden they could ill afford in this war of attrition. Despite the chaos caused by Johnston's surprise attack and his mistake of clearly underestimating Confederate forces, Grant rallied his men. His troops held on to a vital landing spot known as Pittsburgh Landing, and most importantly, they were able to await reinforcements. After the initial chaos and steady pressure from the Confederates, the Union lines under Grant held firm, preventing the Confederates from completely encircling them. However, this is not the end of the story. The Union suffered heavy losses and found themselves in a precarious situation by the end of that first day. With fresh troops from Buell bolstering the Union Army on day 2, Grant orchestrated a powerful counteroffensive. This comeback showcased Grant's tactical skills and exposed weaknesses in the Confederate lines. With Buell's forces now integrated into the Union lines, Grant launched a coordinated counteroffensive around mid-morning. The strategy shifted from a desperate defense to a calculated pushback. Union artillery positioned on the eastern ridge unleashed a devastating barrage, softening Confederate positions. This relentless Union pressure slowly exhausted the Confederates. General Albert Sidney Johnston, the initial Confederate commander personally leading the attack, had been killed on day 1. This loss of leadership proved to be a significant blow to Confederate morale. Johnston was a respected and charismatic figure, and his absence left a void that could not easily be filled. The remaining Confederate commanders, Generals Beauregard and Bragg, did not inspire the same level of confidence in their troops. With Johnston gone, the two Confederate generals also disagreed on the tactics. General Beauregard advocated for continuing the offensive, while Bragg argued for a more defensive posture. This lack of unity significantly hampered the Confederates' response to the Union counteroffensive. Additionally, the fierce fighting of the first day had taken its toll on Confederate ranks. Many Unions were under strength and lacked the supplies and ammunition needed to sustain a prolonged offensive posture. As Union forces pushed forward on the second day, the Confederate defense began to crumble under the combined weight of these factors. By nightfall, the exhausted Confederates retreated, leaving the Union victorious, but forever scarred by the immense cost of the battle. So how did Shiloh change Grant's image? Well, that's a double-edged sword. The initial surprise tarnished his reputation, but his second-day heroics started to reshape it. Newspapers played a big role too. Some continued the criticism, while others began to portray Grant as a determined leader, hardened by the fires of war, willing to make tough decisions for the Union cause. Despite the initial public outcry, President Lincoln saw Grant's potential. Grant wasn't your typical flamboyant Civil War general. He wasn't concerned with self-promotion or flashy tactics. He was a strategist. He was a fighter who prioritized winning, even if it meant taking heavy casualties. Lincoln, perhaps more than anyone else, understood this crucial difference. President Lincoln's support during this crucial time bolstered Grant's image as a general worthy of leading a larger force. We have to remember that Lincoln's primary goal was to preserve the Union, no matter the cost. He recognized that Grant, despite his flaws, was a general who wouldn't shy away from tough decisions and brutal battles necessary to achieve that goal. Shiloh wasn't just a battle. It was a crucible that forged Grant into the resolute leader that he would ultimately come to be. Shiloh and later Vicksburg paved the way for Grant's eventual rise to command the entire Union Army. Grant's story at Shiloh is a reminder that leadership is complex. It's about learning from mistakes. It's about adapting to a changing situation and demonstrating unwavering determination in the face of adversity. The Union victory at Shiloh was a crucial turning point in the Western theater of the Civil War. And I think a lot of these battles that I'm going to choose, you'll see, kind of share that same moniker, these turning points, these significant turning points in a war. The next one we're doing, just for a little preview, is the battle at Midway for the Battle of the Pacific during World War II. Anyway, back to the story. Before Shiloh, the Confederacy had enjoyed some success in the West. They had established strong defensive positions and managed to hold off the Union advances. However, the Union victory at Shiloh is going to shatter this momentum. With their victory, the Union Army gained control of important strategic locations in Tennessee and Mississippi. This opened the door for them to push deeper into the Confederate heartland. This also allowed them to control certain crucial Southern supply lines, capturing vital railroad networks such as the one in Memphis and the Charleston Railroad. This ultimately put the Confederacy on the defensive in the West for the remainder of the war. The battle was the bloodiest in American history up to that point, with over 200,000 casualties on both sides. This brutal reality served as a grim reminder of the war's immense cost, as numbers are going to go up and up and up with every subsequent battle. Shiloh's impact, however, goes way beyond just who won and lost. It was a turning point for Grant, as we've kind of talked about, proving he was a tough leader who wasn't going to give up easy. The battle was also a brutal wake-up call about just how high this war, just how high the cost for this war was going to be. Soldiers on both sides died in droves. Shiloh made it clear that this war wouldn't be won without a lot of sacrifice. In short, Shiloh showed that victory would be hard-earned and forever marked by the lives lost. Looking at the leaders involved at Shiloh, you get a real sense of the different personalities that shaped the Civil War. Grant's grit after a tough start, Johnston's strategic brains taken out of the game too early, and the clash of egos between Beauregard and Bragg. It's all a reminder that the Civil War wasn't just about battles or tactics, it was also about the people making these decisions. Shiloh wasn't just a test in military smarts, it was a window into the hearts and minds of the men who led the armies. The death of Albert Sidney Johnston at the Battle of Shiloh had a ripple effect in the Confederacy, ultimately impacting Robert E. Lee's position. With the Western theater in disarray after Shiloh, the focus of the Confederacy shifted eastward. Defending Richmond, the Confederate capital, became top priority. This shift in focus elevated the importance of the victories of General Robert E. Lee. His string of successes, particularly in the Peninsula Campaign and the Second Battle of Manassas, or the Second of Bull Run, solidified his position as the Confederacy's most skilled general. So it's interesting, as we conclude with Shiloh here, that this one battle pretty much sets up the trajectory of both Lee leading the entire Union Army and Robert E. Lee becoming the leader of the entire Confederate Army. Well, there you have it, folks. The Battle at Shiloh, American Civil War, April 6, 1862. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you like this podcast, please save it, share it, love it, like it, post it on your social media. Do whatever you want to do. Next episode will be the Battle at Midway, which will probably be a little bit longer than this one. If you like what you hear, go to Facebook, tell me about it, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, Follow me, follow me, follow me. Until next time, go throughout the land and proclaim liberty.